Hello and welcome to Speaking Out on Financial Abuse, stories of survival and hope after financial abuse in a marriage or romantic partnership. I'm your host, Lori G., and today I welcome President and CEO of Crisis Center North, Grace Coleman. Grace is a longtime crusader and advocate committed to bringing justice and resources to victims and survivors of domestic abuse in the Pennsylvania region. Grace is going to share her unique upbringing as a veterinarian's daughter in the rural countryside of Pennsylvania, and also tell us about the historic roots of Crisis Center North and its many innovative efforts to bring an end to domestic violence in their region. Most notably, the PAWS for Empowerment program, which employs canine advocates to accompany survivors of intimate partner violence to their courtroom appearances, helping their clients feel a better sense of confidence and safety. Grace, happy holidays and welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Lori. I appreciate being here today.
So, where in the world are you now and where are you originally from?
I am running a domestic violence program in the Pittsburgh area currently today. And I come from a small village called Lawton, Pennsylvania, in the Endless Mountains. That area was largely established by the Irish when they fled to Ireland for the Great Potato Famine. And my father and mother established a veterinary clinic there where their families had resided for hundreds of years.
So you really are one of the original families, going back for quite a few generations.
Yeah, it goes very far back. My father's family was here first, and then my mother's family came. But it was a really interesting childhood because it was very much like a little Ireland where I came from.
Am I picturing an Amish community?
There were Amish people in the region that my father provided veterinary services for, but it was in the Irish Catholic community largely that I grew up in. And I would say it was interesting. I know when I first got married, my husband would say, "Oh, I like your sweater." And I would say, "Oh, it's store-bought. What is that?" And I was like, "Oh, wait, I'm really tired. I'm sorry." Because things were homemade there. People did do their own sewing there. They did a lot of things with their hands, but it was a really great experience to grow up in an area like that. And a lot of what I learned about forming community came from that community. And I've brought that into Pittsburgh to the best of my abilities.
Do you do any of that stuff now? Do you make homemade bread? Do you sew?
I do not sew, I have to say. Admittedly, my home ec teacher sat me in a chair and said she would give me a C if I didn't touch a needle. So that was not where my skill lied at all. But yeah, I do a lot of cooking. I can bake my own bread. Largely the skills my father taught me were surgical and veterinary in nature, so fixing boo-boos and stitches and those kinds of things I have a great ability at. I would answer calls that came into my father's clinic. The first question I asked, is it flesh or fur? Because I never really knew if someone was going to have a baby in our yard, or if it would be an amputated body part from a farming accident, or if it was actually a dog. So I already started with, this is Dr. Coleman's office, flesh or fur. And then we kind of went from there, but there was no social work services in that area. There was no medical provider in the area. Like to go to the nearest hospital, you probably had to travel over an hour. So there was a lot of first aid and pieces that we did at the vet clinic because we were the first stop if people couldn't make it. So it was a very great place to learn how to run a crisis center, I have to say. It was perfect training for a crisis center.
Well, how did you become involved in the domestic violence field yourself personally?
Well, my husband decided to take a position at one of the Penn State campuses in the Pittsburgh region. And I always teased him and said, well, I still like you enough to go with you. So we moved out here. And I wanted to do something that really combined my love of research with practicality. And so I taught a lot of classes prior to coming to Crisis Center North in women's studies and English and writing communication type courses, and really was interested in trying to taking applied research and putting it to good use in the community. So when we moved here and the position became open at Crisis Center North, I thought, this is really interesting. I think I'd like to try my hand at it. And I have been at the organization for 26 years now. So.
Wow, that long.
Yep, long time. It won my heart.
So you just had a personal passion for it. You don't come from a background yourself of domestic violence.
Well, I think I'm not sure if I learned more from my father about veterinary services or people, because like I said, there was no social work services. So we kind of were the one-stop shop for everything. And I did see a lot of things in rural America. I saw a lot of things that I didn't necessarily like. My house was a haven of sorts. I mean, I think there weren't a lot of Democrats in the area. There weren't a lot of people who were college educated in the area, there's nothing wrong with that. But it was just a little bit of a unique household, I have to say.
Now, the Crisis Center itself, Crisis Center North, what is the history of this center? How did it start?
Crisis Center North was started by our founding mother, whose name is Dee Walk. Unfortunately, Dee is no longer with us, but her story was very interesting. Her husband, Paul, was a psychologist, and he started offering services to victims of domestic violence pro bono in his home to address the issue. And this was before there was the terminology or the term domestic violence. And he seemed to really have a talent in working with these individuals. And unfortunately, he died quite young, and people kept showing up at Dee's door. And Dee had decided she was a teacher, but she wanted to go back to law school. And she was getting ready to enroll into law school. She didn't know what to do with these clients that kept showing up at her door. So she initially, after Paul's death, referred them out and tried to send them back to other therapists. But the understanding in the field was not great then. And so they didn't feel that they were helped, and they really missed Paul. So they kept coming back to Dee. So she ultimately abandoned her plans to go back to law school, and she ended up forming our center. She got a group of women together in the community to address the issues of domestic violence in our area, and that ended up becoming her new mission after Paul's death.
Is that somebody who's inspired you personally? Is there other women that have inspired you to stay in it? Because, we have a high burnout rate in this profession.
I think, there's probably two reasons that I was drawn to the field. The first was that my father ran an all-encompassing crisis clinic of his own, and I really learned he had no set hours. He went when he was needed by the community, and so he was a master he'd paint a room, put the paintbrush down, and then go on a call. Like, he just would adapt to whatever was required to him at the time, and he could really relax in between being called out, but his job was pretty much 24/7. And then when I met my husband in college, he came from a home where domestic violence was present, and it was a pretty intense and serious situation. So that's when I got a look of domestic violence up close. And then we got married, and I ran a domestic violence center, and most of his research was on domestic violence. So then we were the family that fought domestic violence, I guess would be the way to say it.
Crisis Center North is pretty significant in its contribution and what it's doing for the communities. Where is it located, and what is the average size of the community that you're serving on a monthly basis?
Well, we are located in the Pittsburgh region. We can't share our exact location for safety purposes, but we do see over 2,500 clients a year, and we provide over 30,000 services. So I would say that my team really specializes in providing longer-term services. We do emergency shelter, but not 30-day shelter. And we also do a housing program, which was one of 6 in the country right now for victims and companion animals. So our housing structure is a little bit different than you'd find in a traditional structure. So I like to think of us as doing longer-term intense services that really look at the root and systemic causes of domestic violence. So we could be working with a client for 2 years or more to help them establish economic self-sufficiency and to get back on their feet for a period of time. In Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh area, there are 4 domestic violence centers. The other ones provide shelter services, and we kind of are the mirror opposite. We provide counseling services and longer-term services.
Let's just dive in and break down the different facets of Crisis Center North and what you offer to somebody who is on their way out.
Well, we do provide a 24-hour hotline that people can access, and I think it's wonderful. Our hotline and phone services, we have no answering machines here. I really just don't believe in it. Maybe I'm taking that from my country roots, but I think that when you're in a crisis situation, you want to hear a voice on the end of the phone, and that does take considerable commitment from my team. And we provide text line services from 9 to 9 daily. We really entered into the chat text line in 2019. We started designing it. And as luck may have it, it was designed right before COVID hit in 2020. And this really was, we found, helpful to individuals that were of younger generations that prefer to text. It was helpful to individuals that may have been in situations where they couldn't be heard on the phone, right, for safety purposes. So high lethal situations, we found it was very helpful. And we were just very fortunate to have had that in place prior to the pandemic. And it was the first in the country that had both chat and text features. So we were featured in some tech journals, and we received some press for working through that particular issue. It sounds silly now because technology has advanced so much in the last 5 years, but at the time
that's good and bad, huh?
Yeah, it does keep us on our toes. I have to say that.
What is the size of your organization itself?
You might be more impressed when you hear this, but we have a staff of 14 people, if you can believe that.
Wow.
And our budget ranges between $1.6 million and $2.3 million, depending on the year, and government funding across the board. So I do have a team that works incredibly hard at providing all those services because, like I said, it is 24/7 that we provide services. And the pandemic hit, many domestic violence centers weren't able to do in-person services after hours. So I know most do provide 24-hour hotline, but we actually provide in-person services. So we dispatch advocates 24/7. So those 14 people, myself included, are often on call, taking the calls in the middle of the night. And if it requires us to hotel a victim or to go out and meet someone in a police station or meet someone in a hospital, we do that. So I have amazing respect for my team. And obviously we couldn't accomplish it without dedicated advocates like we have. I'm not sure that every domestic violence center needs to provide every service on their own, but what we do need to do is collaborate with people in our own communities to solve the problem together. And we've done that model in a number of different capacities and a number of different programs. But I did want to go back to something critical about financial abuse and how prevalent it is, because I was just reading the other day that 78% of people don't consider financial abuse as abuse. And I had to stop and reread that stat again, because I know I'm immersed in it in a way that most people are not. But it's interesting, the perception of what is abuse and educating the public on that piece, because clearly if you don't have economic resources to escape abuse, it's not because you don't want to go. You don't have the resources to be able to do that. So our program, we provide counseling, we provide case management services. We have the first microloan program for domestic violence victims in the state of Pennsylvania for women who have, or victims, I should say, but many of our clients are women who have negative credit ratings. We can help rebuild their credit rating. And that's what I'm talking about in terms of the longer term services, because depending on how they've been impacted physically, emotionally, spiritually, and financially, there's a lot of work to do there. So even in getting an apartment, well, you can't get an apartment if your credit rating has been destroyed. So we may have to look at and say, okay, well, let's do some safety planning before you go. Let's do some economic empowerment pieces before you go. Let's get you a micro loan so we can rebuild your credit so that when you go for your apartment, you're able to do it. And I think that's where the case management team at CCN is so effective, because I really feel like case managers are the unsung heroes of the domestic violence movement. I'm just going to do a huge push for them, because they're like the masters of problem solving, the masters of budgeting, the people who can help you rebuild your credit rating. They know every resource that exists.
Because this is critical stuff at any age. And you can recover, at least to some extent at any age, if you can get some clarity and some literacy, as you're saying.
And our case management team offers a number of workshops, like on budgeting. We've had banks come in to do pieces on what is line of credit, loan rates, those kinds of things. So we do try to provide a lot of classes and coursework on financial literacy as an underpinning to try to address this very prevalent need that victims have.
It's hard to take the shame out of financial abuse. That's why a lot of people just sweep it under the carpet. We're quick to call the police if someone punches us in the face, but if someone steals from your bank account, you're not really as often going to say something about it because it's embarrassing, frankly.
It is. And then when I look at least at Crisis Center North, our clients, I mean, when I look at the total population, 44% of our clients make an income of less than $15,000. Now that's compared to our 7% of the total population of our service area, right? So it's more than double our client versus the service area. And then 29% of our clients report an income below $35,000 as compared to 13% of the total population in our service area. So those statistics I think are really shocking as to how economic abuse and how abuse impacts clients. So if you imagine someone making $35,000 a year or worse yet, $15,000 a year, and then having their credit destroyed.
With minor children involved.
Yeah, it takes time. I think the message I'd want people to know after doing this work for a quarter of a century is that it really does take time to rebuild a life. And so providing the kind of funding that domestic violence centers need to do that is just really imperative for the health of our society.
You focus on some really interesting things. Tell us more about your PAWS program. This has to be your baby, I'm sure, but tell us about this. This is really, really interesting. Take your dog to court day.
Well, my dog goes to court almost every day. No, I started the PAWS for Empowerment program with a single shelter dog named Penny, and we started the program in 2011. So we've been at it for quite a while now. And the program advanced from providing, Penny would go to therapeutic sessions with clients, and then we expanded to taking canines into court to help victims testify and feel more comfortable with the courtroom process and make the court more compassionate and humane for survivors that were in it. And then it expanded into providing housing for victims and their companion animals, both large and small animals who can't escape abuse because they don't have anywhere to put the dog or they don't have anywhere to put the horse, as the case may be.
Yeah.
And so that's been a really amazing journey. And we've been able to work with dogs that have been impacted by PTSD as a result of the abuse. We've been able to provide veterinary stipends to ensure the health of the animal, because I think in American society now, pets aren't what they used to be. They are family members now. We celebrate their birthdays, we buy them Christmas presents, and we're not going anywhere without them. And so as society has evolved in looking at animals differently in that way, we've incorporated animals into our program, and they've been just a huge, huge asset overall. It's been an amazing journey.
And so they attend court or a stressful proceeding with the client.
They go to court. I mean, it depends on each case is unique and individual. If they go to court, the canine can accompany them. We take our canines largely to magisterial court, and we did that intentionally because in magisterial court, victims and perpetrators are put closer in proximity to one another. Those courts may not look like formal courtrooms. And we found that dogs were really excellent there at lowering anxiety and stress levels for survivors in those courts. But we've heard from the judges that they get better testimony from survivors. Survivors feel more open when the canines are there. And we've even, at one case, I remember a perpetrator ran at a victim in court in a hostile way, and the dog body blocked the survivor. And people are like, how did you train her to do that? Like, I really didn't. And they develop their own job description. It's really interesting to watch. And they'll start doing, like, the first dog, Penny, could diagnose anxiety versus depression with 100% accuracy and had a tell. She would tell the counselor, nope, this is anxiety, this is depression. They do start communicating with their handlers, and each dog communicates differently. So it becomes very important that we do.
Well, that's what I was wondering about attachment. And also, do they sign up for this? And that means every time I go to court, I'm going to have a dog with me?
Well, we cleared with the very wonderful judges that allowed them in court, specific courts that they routinely go to, so they're there. If a client doesn't want a dog, would be allergic to a dog, or it was not comforting, then we have locations at the court to place the dog while the advocates are working. But they can request if they'd like the dog to be there. And we've even had some clients who, like, for example, felt their perpetrators would harm an animal and didn't want to have an animal. So we had one survivor survivor who came in and said, can I just read a book with your dog? And I was like, take her. And so she came in once a week and we'd make her a cup of tea and she would sit in one of our decompression rooms and just read her book with my dog because she really missed dogs. So they find all kinds of interesting ways and they're really useful for staff. Like I find when grants are due and the grant writers are stressed out, I usually find the dogs in the development room as people are working on federal grants and right at people's feet. So I think sometimes they're like, you people have to hold it together. You're supposed to be helping everyone else, right? They are a lot of work. So it takes me about 2 years to train a dog, I'd say. Yeah. And my team is amazing. So we have Dana Friday, who runs the program. The program became large enough that I needed a helper. And she is an attorney that ran one of the largest horse farms in Western Pennsylvania. And then we have Sherry Herschel, who is a survivor and a former vet tech. She really is awesome at training and looking at the needs of the clients. And we have Rhiannon, who is a farm girl. And then we have myself, who is the daughter of a veterinarian that was turned into a vet tech with no degree. And so it's a very interesting group of individuals that are very passionate about the work that they do with animals. But we kind of have just the right combination of people, which is a huge blessing, I think.
How does Crisis Center run in terms of funding? Do you do events and what type of events do you do?
Well, I would say we have a very diversified funding stream, which I think is what you need.
Smart.
Healthy. Right, yeah. So we have state monies, federal monies, foundation money, and we do about 31% of our funding comes from fundraising, which is a pretty large percentage. So we're not completely dependent on state and federal dollars, which is very helpful in times like these when you have the federal government shut down. And we also have a state budget not passed here in Pennsylvania. So right now we're not getting anything. So it's good that we have revenue coming in through fundraising. So I would say about 26% of our funding comes from state sources, 35% comes from federal, 11% comes from foundation, and 28% comes from fundraising events. And basically we have a fall event, which is our PAWS for Empowerment walk in October, where everybody comes out to this park and we do training demonstrations with the dogs, bring our collaborative partners. We sell a lot of really cool dog paraphernalia. There are food trucks and we take a big walk. Everyone walks with their dogs. It's one of my favorite events. Kids love it because we have a Halloween contest. So all the dogs dress up and they're judged. And then the winning dog walks away with a nice prize for the year. That seems to be something coveted that the community loves to do. And in May, we do our signature fundraiser, which is Cocktails and Cuisine. And that is a wonderful night where about 400 people come to this event each year. And we enjoy cocktails and cuisine and a live auction and a silent auction. And so, if you want to see the Northern Lights in Iceland or take a safari in Africa, Laura, then I will invite you personally to come and bid on it at our event in May.
It takes so much ingenuity now. It's really cool how everybody's getting so creative.
It takes a lot of creativity, I think, for all the domestic violence centers to keep funds coming in from that basis.
What are your goals coming up after the new year for the organization?
We had quite a few. I think one of our goals that I'm really excited to work about is we started a new partnership with Nexian Solutions, and they are a tech firm. Their CEO, Liz Kohler, is an amazing human being to work with, and she has designed a device that will help for people in high lethal situations to get emergency help faster than you can through 911. So for October Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we launched this project, which we were really excited about because there was no funding for it. We had to work with angel investors, which both Nexian Solutions and Crisis Center North worked to find angel investors to provide these devices. And we don't share the specificity of the device because we don't want perpetrators to know what it is. In altercations, the phone is the first thing to go. And so I think it's something like 67% of the time, if there's a physical altercation, the phone gets smashed. And think about it. Think about being strangled and holding your phone up to your face and having your face let you into your phone, or putting a code in your phone and then finding the app and then the steps you have to do. This device makes everything much faster for survivors. And so we are super excited to bring this service to individuals who are screening off the charts for a lethality assessment. And we're working right now with Penn State University to document the efficacy of that program, because I married a researcher. So now I'm working with partners at Penn State to do that. And then in terms of the PAWS for Empowerment program, I think we're going to be working on a book chapter to kind of outline our work and be included in a book on different animal interventions that we're doing. And of course, just saving lives and keeping all the balls up in the air. Those are our goals for next year.
And what about personally? You climbing Everest? Or, I mean, you're a pretty dynamic person.
I think my personal goal is interweaved in with Crisis Center North. That's just a part of what I do. I stayed with it for so long because I found a way to integrate what I care about into the organization. So it's not really a difference between work and not work for me.
That's the best career ever. You just love what you do. And I can tell you really love what you do.
I do love our board of directors because it's the kind of organization that allowed me to make this be my canvas. And when I have an idea, I love working for an organization. When I have a new idea about how to do something differently, that I can create it, then it's just like finding funding, right? To be able to support it. But to be able to have a job where you can look at the community and say, I think that this thought in my head needs to happen, right? And I think that it would look different if it did. And it's super exciting to me because I'm driving what I want to do on a day-to-day basis, as opposed to working for someone where I line their pockets with gold.
And this is not exactly a billion-dollar industry if you want to be a billionaire.
Yeah, but the creativity and the people that you get to meet in this job, like I've met the president doing this. I've met some really amazing individuals during my career here, which kind of keeps it always new and interesting. But I like solving problems, and man, there's enough of them here to keep me busy for 10 lifetimes,
Well, Grace, why would you encourage somebody to go into this field?
I think we have to be concerned about what we create for future generations. And I think that doesn't change unless we do it, unless we build the platform. And there are just so many injustices that I think it's a travesty of justice for people to be bored. I'm like, pick something, right? And certainly looking at rights for women right now is something of great concern, given the current political environment that we're in and the work that we've done to get to this point. I'd hate to really see any of that work go backwards. I don't take any of this for granted. And I think that's because I can look to my grandmother who didn't get to vote until she was in her 20s. So I grew up hearing someone that didn't have the right to vote. So it always kind of hurts my heart. Yesterday was voting day, right? When people are like, I don't think I have time. And I'm like, do you understand that women were in prison and force-fed for the right that we have right now that you think you don't have time for? So I think it's just because maybe I'm old and I listen.
Hey, it's people, use it or lose it.
Right. People who didn't have that opportunity, those stories really kind of stuck with me. So I don't take privilege for granted. And I think the rights we've gained just because we have them now doesn't mean that we're going to keep them.
And what do you find the most personally fulfilling about the work that you do with Crisis Center North?
I think it's knowing, but perhaps not seeing, that you change generations of lives. So when you change a survivor's life and you change the life of her children, presumably you change the life of the grandchildren. And knowing that you're putting this positive trajectory into place that's going to move forward for longer than you can see really fascinates me, because I don't think I know at the end of the day that my team has made a difference. And we go home exhausted and tired and many times frustrated, but there isn't a single day where anybody on this team hasn't made a difference. And I'm not sure you can say that in other lines of work.
Well, you're changing the family tree altogether. Grace, I've really enjoyed this. We all love animals, but when you see that animals also can do dual duty of helping people who are dealing with traumatic situations, I think that's fantastic. But I do have 2 questions for you that I ask of all guests. And I'm going to throw this in because I just have to, regarding the British monarchy's recent official statement expressing support for victims and survivors of abuse, as well as the King of Britain's historic actions against another royal family member. Do you think that's opening more doors of public discussion regarding what we call coercive control by people that are powerful?
I do. I think what's happening in the news right now brings the global pandemic of violence against women out of the shadows and it puts it into mainstream conversation. And whenever you take those kinds of steps and then you add accountability to it, you are moving the dial forward at least a little bit further. I think it's interesting in my 25 years to look at people not talking about domestic violence at all and moving to where it's so much more common now. And that's definitely a move in the right direction.
What is your tip for someone who is in an abusive partnership right now, but hasn't been brave enough to take that first step?
I think that you have to do whatever you have to do to keep the embers of hope alive within yourself until you're in a place where a first step is possible. I think a lot of survivors can judge themselves very harshly, but even if you can't take that step right now, the most critical thing you can do is to want to believe that you can, and to keep that hope alive, because eventually, if you do, it will become possible.
Definitely wise words. And what is your tip for someone who is newly left an abusive relationship, but isn't really sure what to do next to try to start to recover?
I think what has to happen after you leave an abusive situation is that you have to first learn to listen to your innermost self again. I really think that's the first thing, because that's one of the things that abuse strips from you. And then you have to take a step. And there is no right or wrong step. Just take a step. Any step you take is going to move you forward. And I would advise survivors to begin where they're intuitively called to begin and to build from there, because there is no right or wrong when you're rebuilding your life. Just begin.
That is so smart. Yeah, start listening to your own voice, because you've only heard one other voice. Sometimes for decades, maybe 40 years of your life, there's only one other voice, and that's the other person breathing in the house with you. Grace, thank you so much for appearing on this show. And I'm excited for you to come back and talk more about your PAWS program in 2026. Again, you've been listening to special guest Grace Coleman. She is president and CEO of Crisis Center North of the Pittsburgh area. I will list all their links below, including more information about their K9 Advocate program. I hope you are all having a wonderful holiday season. This is Lori G., and you've been listening to Speaking Out on Financial Abuse.